So let's I take all of that straight into the market. The stock market was where the big story was yesterday, and it's been so for most of this week. Temple Ashaju is our business correspondent, and he's the one looking over the red-hot stock market and what's happening to the rest of your financial markets on Broad Street. Good morning, Tempo. Let's have this conversation, show some data to our viewers here. Good morning to you.
Good morning, boss, and thanks for joining us right here where the market is getting more and more bullish by the day now. Yesterday, we actually saw the bulls, taking over the market, the returns, the positive sentiments and appetite we've seen on equities in recent time to the levels we saw them at sometimes in May this year, May 2019, because that was the last time that we saw the market, touching these levels, up some 1.91%, almost 2%. May was when we had the election, concluded, and things were, this administration was beginning to actually settle down then. So that level of sentiment we had that period is now back here, because again we've seen the foreign and domestic investors now moving between OMO and of course equities markets. OMO maturities as they did yesterday, we saw that level of appetite on OMO. We saw that same appetite here on equities. Basically all share index experienced that significant upward movement. We saw that rally, which is up to 26,843.11 basis points rather. The equity capitalization also added a whopping 245 billion naira, and of course it brought back that capitalization to 13 trillion naira, away from 12 trillion naira. The move we saw yesterday also moderated the year-to-date performance of the market, in spite of the fact that we saw a decline in the level of activity. The activity level of the market yesterday was 9.7% weaker than where we saw it the previous day. But if you look at the value of the transactions, that was up by more than 10 billion naira. And of course, we had over 6,000 deals in yesterday trading session alone, thanks to all the tier 1 banking names. The Access Bank yesterday was on full bid. We saw the share price of this particular company crossing 10 naira yesterday. Look at FBN Holdings, which also was up yesterday by more than 9%, almost 10%, 9.65% precisely. That jumped all the way from 5 naira 60 kobo to 6 naira 25 kobo yesterday. Basically all the sectors were also very, very positive. If you look at the banking segments, which is up the most by some 7.04%. The consumer goods side of the market, thanks to Nigerian breweries, was up by some 98 basis points. Industrial goods was also up, very, very positive, 1.26%. Insurance, 1.96%. And even oil and gas, where a lot of investors have actually been given cold shoulder to, was also up by some 92 basis points. In the energy segment of the market, the company that actually gave this push to the index, to the rise in the oil and gas index, was the O&O, which made a comeback yesterday by 9.06% after seeing about 3 million units of its shares, traded on that platform. The day before, we had actually seen Seplat and O&O making the positive push, which gave the index a rise the day before. But yesterday, Seplat was actually unchanged. Almost all other sectors or companies that you have under that particular category were actually unchanged yesterday, except for O&O. NASD OTC remained unchanged. We saw some trades, 500 units of Wamco PLC, yesterday traded, and that was the only stock that actually had the one deal that we saw yesterday, but there was no change in the share price, neither was there a change in the NSI of the market. For the fixed income side of the market, bonds first. Investors continue to give their bullish appetite now to the bond side of the market. We saw a second consecutive day of gains on the bonds market. Investors continue to reinvest the funds that they made from the maturities of yesterday, and of course that pushed down the yields across the board. Yesterday we saw interest on the 2021, 2029, 2034 security. In fact, the 2049 security in particular, which is the 30-year bond, was the most traded security yesterday. Was up to 111 naira 5 kobo in the market, and you see it right there. You've got 52 deals put across that against that security right there. Investors have continued to show preference for yields over the duration of this period, actually, and that has led to some 25 basis points decline as we saw the interest rate at some 13.35%. For the Treasury bills market put together with the OMO maturities that we have now, we continue to see especially the foreign players now moving away from the NTB market, the secondary side of the market, to OMO maturities. Yesterday, we saw a sizable interest of foreign portfolio investors, going for the short-dated securities and, of course, the mid-dated securities on the OMO side of things. The newly issued one-year NTB at Wednesday's primary market auction, which is a 12-month, the 12th of November 2020 security, was also not left out. We saw investors actually betting on that as well, and market players who missed that the auction quickly swooped in. That also caused the yield on that side of the market to continue to plunge. And if you look at the deals on the NTB side of things, yesterday was just 26. The value of the transaction was just a little above 15.54 billion naira, compared to the OMO maturities, where we saw the highest number of deals, 793, and of course that is valued at 205 billion naira plus. That tells you that these key players in the fixed income space are now more bullish on OMO maturities than just NTB, Bosin.
Yeah, this is what you call market rattling. And that's what Godwin Emefiele and his team at the central bank have been able to do. They're rattling everyone, and everybody's scampering all over the place, looking for the best place to get some gains, lock in a little bit, even if it's just for 30 days, even if it's T+1, folks just don't mind wherever they can get money. Look at treasury bills, Tempo, NTB at single digits at the secondary market, just as we saw at the primary market auction. That was the game changer, and everybody. So the PFAs are the ones scrambling now, as you rightly said. But again, I love the sweet side for the stock market. I'm sure the folks at the stock exchange, Oscar Onyema and the rest of his team, perhaps will be giving Godwin Emefiele a phone call and say, thank you very much for kicking some billions of naira down the road into onto the trading floor. Thank you very much for bringing some money, helping us to, because with this, we've just scaled down on our year-to-date negative index return at the stock market from north of 16%, exactly, almost 17% now, to just about 14% or so. I'm sure this is some good news. And again, volume was very, very high as well. More than 600 million, more than 6,000 deals or transactions. Our average is just about 3,000, isn't it, Temple?
Yeah, that's usually the average, 30-day average that we get. I mean, it's usually around that. The value of transaction is usually around 3 billion naira on the 30-day average. But yesterday we saw it first midday was around 8 billion naira until the stockbroker walked into the market and told me it was actually notching 10 billion naira. I mean, that was a surprising move for me in the markets. And all of a sudden we saw it change, on the trading portal. Or the portal of the Nigerian Stock Exchange was over 10 billion naira in the markets.
A very exciting time. So what are stockbrokers saying yesterday, day before yesterday? What are their thoughts? I'm sure you've heard from one or two of them. What are they saying at the moment?
This is the period when you hardly hear brokers talk, actually. All you see them do is smile all over the place. I mean, they keep smiling, they're so happy.
Who talks when they are making money? You don't talk when the mouth is full, Temple. That's the dinner table behavior. Temple, don't talk when your mouth is full. That's it. When you're eating, you don't talk, so you keep quiet.
That's hilarious. The trend we're seeing among brokers, among these dealers that you have on the floor of the exchange. It smiles all over the place. You know, like one of them said, you're not going to have the market go lower than the levels we saw them last 2 weeks ago, for the rest of this year. So it means that the rally is here, the bullish sentiment is here, and of course, the liquidity level has risen. This also tells us that for companies that are currently looking for capital, trying to do some kind of rights issue, capital raising exercise by one means or the other, tells you that liquidity level in this country is actually right there. Let's not hear anyone say right now that there is no money nowhere. There's actually that money.
Yes, because if you're looking at about 250 billion uptick in market value back to 13 trillion. That's quite a big one. We lost that level weeks ago, and I was thinking perhaps we'll never grab that again before December 31st. Now it's here again, it looks like. So well, we say thank you to everyone who's making this happen. Again, I'm sure the market traders will be very, very present. I'm sure next week CMC, the SEC CMC will be some sweet story to tell for those who are on the equity side. I'm sure retail investors will be the happiest, will be the most happiest folks right now on your market street.
Absolutely. Correct. I mean, that's something that they will be looking forward to as well. The CMC meeting, that will be the last edition for this year because it is something that actually holds on a quarterly basis. We understand that the capital market the 10-year capital market master plan is what will dominate the discussion, the conversation this time. We also know that from the last meeting, the Capital Markets Committee talked about engaging with the NITDA to talk about the data protection policy of government, which is something that they really need to understand on this side of the divide where, you have equities, you have information of a lot of retail and institutional investors, players in the market. How do you then go ahead to hold this information tight when it comes to relating with some other countries? Should you divulge information about your investors or not? What is the data protection policy of another country as well? So that when we have to do some kind of a deal, whether by way of cross-dealing or by way of any form of exchange, we'll know who we are talking to. So basically, they need to hear from NITDA when this meeting holds. And of course, that will be made available right here on Channels Television to a lot of our viewers who will also want to digest such an information.
Yes, okay. Tempo, thank you so much. But again, for folks who perhaps missed it, the big action story for the fixed income market is at the open market operations. Thank you, Tempo. You talked about that earlier. I just want our viewers to see how this is playing out between the open market operations and the NTB. So if you just bring those slides back there to show you what the discount high is. If you're looking at what investors are trying to do right now, since the open market operations belong to the banks in terms of liquidity management by the central bank, so they're trying to pile a lot of cash into that. Coming through, the four most actively traded. Okay, this is the NTB. Let's deal with the OMO first. Shall we just change that quickly? Thank you. Now here it goes. That's the open market operations. So look at the far right and you see the number of deals on each of those four most actively traded. 214, 184, 145, and 117. That's quite big. You flip that to the NTB, and you find out that, yes, the market has actually changed. But we'll talk about logistics. What are some of the head-scratching problems that those who are in that business have? Temple Ashaju has one or two interviews for us.